second session. Okay, so I was saying this is our second session of Introduction to the Days of Awe. The Yamim Noraim, we have discussed the idea of Nora, Yamim, days. Noraim is a complicated concept. Normally, Nora has two elements in it. One of them is the fact, one call it awe, something that excels, but also has another meaning that applied very much to these days, especially during the medieval times, and that is the days of fear, of terror. The idea that we are really immersed in a season where we are vulnerable and we don't know who will live, who will die. We will be following today. Last week we introduced some of the concepts. If you recall, the idea that during the month of Elul, the month that precedes Rosh Hashanah, we scrutinize our souls, trying to find out our errors. In fact, it is during this season that we ask, as I ask from all of you, that if I have made any mistakes, if I have wronged you in any way, that you would please forgive me. And this is what we say to each other sincerely, to trying to repair anything that has been broken. And I assure you that many times we find out that we have wronged people, that we have made me feel people uncomfortable, and they have not been able to tell us. And to have a dialogue among ourselves, it's always useful, and many times really repairs friendships and relationships in general. The idea also of teshuvah. Teshuvah, if you recall, has a number of meanings. One of them is repentance. The other one, less known but still important in the Hebrew, modern Hebrew, is the idea of
I put the pen
of an answer.
which is in there.
If you have if you're not muted and you have a radio or something, please do turn that off. So in any case, I wanted to show you first some of the tension of this holiday being the beginning of the year at a number of levels. One of them is, what is the approach of Rosh Hashanah in the secular world? And what is the approach of Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year? Remember, we talked last week about Rosh Chodesh, Rosh meaning the head, meaning also the beginning of something. Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year. According to the rabbis, the beginning of creation, yes? Not the beginning of the Jewish people as some we would have imagined. We take a more universal outlook of the world, and we celebrate the beginning of the entire world, not necessarily of the Jewish people. Let me see if I can do this well. I wanted to show both the text in that and in this recording that I hope we can listen. You, Christina, tell me if this works. So I'm going to present this text right there. I hope you do see it. And then this recording of Israeli look at the beginning of the year. In a minute, I explain what this is about. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I should have made in my share screen to share the sound, and yes, that would help. Okay, I'm gonna try again. Again, my forgiveness for this. So here goes. Let's begin from the beginning. Here goes.
כל שנה מתחילה בסימן שאלה, כתינוק המודד צעדיו, כמו זריחה מתגלה על כנרת כחולה, ופניה לשמי מערב. כל שעה מתחילה בסימן שאלה, כמו הלב הפועם לא קצובות, כמו גבעול ירקרק שצומח בלט, ופניו לפסגות הגבוהות. זה נפלא ששנה מתחילה לה בשיר וברוח טובה. כל שנה מתחילה בסימן שאלה, ואנחנו נמצא לתשובה. כל שנייה מתחילה בסימן שאלה, ולפני שתשיב היא תחמור, כמו ליטוף רוח ים שעולה מאשם, ניגונה עוד נשמע מרחוק. זה נפלא ששנה מתחילה לה בשיר וברוח טובה. כל שנה מתחילה בסימן שאלה, ואנחנו נמצא לתשובה. זה נפלא ששנה מתחילה לה בשיר וברוח טובה. כל שנה מתחילה בסימן שאלה, ואנחנו נמצא לתשובה. כל שנה.
Okay, I hope this worked. I hope you were able to both see the text. I'll say, great. Thank you. So why did I want to bring this to you? Because as you could see, the word tshuva is an answer. And in this particular case, if you were following the translation of the song is talking about that kol shana, every year, matchila, it begins besiman she'ela, with a question mark, and we are searching for the answer. In other words, in this case, is perhaps if one would want, from a psychological point of view, it's kind of like a search for a meaning in our lives. When we talk in liturgical terms, we look at what? We look at repentance. We look at the idea of returning. If you recall that we discussed last week, the idea of going back to that place of purity where we had not second thoughts, where we were trusting people, where we were feeling this sense of warmth towards each other, and not being dispirited. So this song talks about this idea of teshuvah, of repentance, in a different look. The look is the idea of trying to find sense to the questions that we have in our lives. I'm sure, like me, you have many questions, things you want to know about how your life is going to continue, and what signs are there for you to think that we have to turn this way or another in our path towards a meaningful life. So the new year approaches, whether from one secular point or another, or a more liturgical way, if you like, from a point of view of the liturgy, we have this idea that is central. I'm going to look at it with you. The idea of a Psalm 81. You'll see it in a minute. I'm going to share it with you in a recording also. This idea of how is that the year begins. How do we begin the year? The year that we begin is with the blowing of the shofar. I'll play something for you. We'll translate it, and then we'll talk some more about it. So, so here it goes. Very good. So we get off of this. So what is this phenomena of what I presented to you? The words "tiku b'chodesh shofar," the idea that is expressed in Psalm 81 that we blow the shofar. Remember the ram's horn. We blow it. When do we blow it? We blow it at the beginning of the month. We blow it at the beginning of the month. This is not only for Rosh Hashanah, but for every month. And this is critical, that when somebody sees the new moon, is able to, Eidim, to witnesses testify in Jerusalem that in fact a new year has approached, and they blow the shofar as an announcement of this moment. They blow the shofar as an announcement of the moment. You ask yourself, perhaps, why is it that then Rosh Hashanah has 2 days instead of 1? And the fact of that is that this is the only the time when this news needed to travel to the diaspora, and if in case that we miss it, we have 2 days to cover for it. However, the rabbis say that because of its importance, this is not 2 days, but it's actually 2 days in one. 2 days in one. So we talk about this central moment of our lives, and we call it Hayom Harat Olam. What does it mean? Basically, that this is the announcement that this is the day of creation, the time where we blast the shofar, not only during the service, but preceded to it, right? So we say that today the world stands as at birth. Today all creation is called to judgment, whether as your children or as your followers. We say to God, if as your children be compassionate with us as a parent is compassionate with children. If as your followers, as your servants, we look to you expectantly, waiting for you to be gracious to us. And as day emerges from night to bring forth a favorable judgment on our behalf, O inspiring and holy one. What is then that what's happening? That we have a little bit of a tension. How is this tension manifest? On one hand, this is the creation of the world. Is this a happy day? Of course it is. How could it not be? This is the creation of the world, and with that, our own creation, right? Creation, human beings created B'Tselem Elohim in the image of God, and therefore trying to achieve, to become, to be aspired to the loftiness that the creator of the universe provides for us. In what we call Nisim Shebechol Yom, the signs, some translate that word as the miracles that we experience every day. You say, what miracles have I seen today? I gather you that a lot of miracles have happened already when you just, first of all, when we woke up. It could have been that we actually did not. And yet we are alive. This is one of central of the miracles of the signs. And then if we woke up, there must be a purpose for it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. And then, of course, we can see, we can walk, we can do all kinds of things that we take for granted every day. But they are central to who we are and central to the world itself, because if we are not in it, the world would be a very radically different place. And so this idea of sound the ram's horn, the shofar, on the day of our festival, a decree for the people of Israel, an ordinance of the God of Israel, of Jacob, right? But Jacob as a universality, the idea that that's one we all come. But the idea of this Yaakov, Jacob, that it's born, right? Grabbing his brother, meaning as a sign of tension, but also then becoming Israel, redeemed after the fight with an angel. We don't know, a messenger or an angel. The idea that this Jacob is transformed into Israel, of the one that has struggled with the messenger and succeeded. So we hope that that is what happens to us. When we enter Rosh Hashanah, we entered liturgically with a number of things. If you look at the services, you're going to notice that, of course, we begin services in the evening, because in Judaism, the day begins at night. How do we know that? For a very simple reason. When you have even the Kiddush, remember we discussed the idea of the blessing of the wine, we say the words, Vayehi Erev, Vayehi Boker. And there was evening and there was morning. The rabbis ask, they discuss everything, as we do with anything that is meaningful to us, right? We discuss why not, and it was morning and there was evening. Vayehi Erev, Vayehi Boker, and there was evening and there was morning. They say it means that the day begins at night. That the day begins at night. And therefore, the services Arbit of Erev, that becomes evening, this is the service that first begins. And how do we begin? We begin with actually lots and lots of majestic impulses, also related to the music. As a cantor, I always reflect on how it's super important that the music that we sing has a reflection on the text, right? And not just because it's nice to sing melodies that we like, but it is also really important and crucial that we are actually able to add an extra dimension to the text. So when we begin the first important and central prayer, Baruch et Adonai Hamborach, may the creator of the universe be blessed, or as we sometimes say, be praised, because some of us feel that we cannot dare to bless God. So what is that's happening is that we begin it with a majestic melody that it becomes something called a Missinai tune. What do we mean by that? According to the rabbis, that is a melody that was actually created at Mount Sinai. Was it really created at Mount Sinai? We don't really know. We didn't have a tape recorder or MP3s or anything like that. But I guess I could say with certainty that is a very old melody. And you probably know it because it goes like this. Ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la ya la 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 ya la ya la. So you notice the majestic sense, the sense of, if you are a musician in the major mode, if you are thinking in Jewish terms, one of the modes, in the Jewish tradition, we don't talk about the major or minor mode if you have learned in school, but rather modes like the Adonai Malach mode, the one of where God reigns, and the cast that has this majestic quality. We use it constantly during the holidays, especially in the evening time, not only for Rosh Hashanah, but also for Yom Kippur as well. And we don't use it again during the year, right? So you hear Baruch et Adonai Hamegorah. And this melody continues reverberating through the service. Tiku b'chodesh shofar. I think you begin to notice that there is certain element of both brightness and majesty. So this is one of the sides. Then there is another side. The side that Rosh Hashanah is also Yom Hadin, the day of judgment. And how is that manifest? Because we have a feeling of in the morning already, a feeling of vulnerability, a feeling of this is serious business. Yes, it's the creation of the world, but it's just not the creation of the world per se. It's the creation of the world with a purpose. And this is something that is always important in Judaism, that is, yes, we have free will. We do. But we also have responsibilities for that. We have to be involved in the world in the right way, because there are also consequences. So when our general society says, we do I, and I do what I want when I want, regardless of any consequences for that, Judaism says, yes, you have free will, we have free will, we can do things, but we have to recognize there are consequences to our actions. And depending on the path that we take, those actions continue one way or another. And so in the morning, we begin with a different mode, in a mode of introspection. I wanted to actually to be even more specific to you as we look at part of the Amidah, the prayer that we recite while standing, not only on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but every day. And it's a prayer that actually was created by the rabbis. It's called also the Shmone Esrei, 18 benedictions, even though they are 19. And please don't ask me why it wasn't changed. I don't know. But basically, these 19 blessings during the day, the regular days, become 7 on Shabbat, and during the holidays contain a particular prayer that is related to the day. And during this time, we actually talk about these ideas of Zochrenu lechaim, melech chafetz b'chaim. We actually begin to ask God, and it's a very profound request. It says, God, remember us for life. In other words, not only just remember us for life. You, who always searches and wishes life. Remember that I discussed last week this idea of ubacharta b'chaim. Yes, thank you for that comment. So in any case, the idea is that in a sense we're trying to remind God that ubacharta b'chaim, that God said in the book of Deuteronomy, and please choose life. In the same way that we know that God is amenable and prefers life, we ask God to remember us for life. Zochrenu lechaim, melech. We use these words of melech, meaning the sovereign. In the Middle Ages, the word melech was the king, because in those days, the king was the sovereign. For us, the king doesn't have the same quality. So sometimes we translate it as a sovereign, the creator, right? And we even have a particular text that we enter the morning with, Ko HaMelech, the king, the sovereign, and begins with this very subdued tune. And those triad, we call it in music, of course reminds you of Amen. And we use this part of another mode called the Selicha, the petitionary mode, that is recited all along. And I want to see if I can then show you one video of something called Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, the idea of choosing life. This is a poignant melody that was written by Joseph Weisgall. while serving on the trenches, in the trenches of the First World War, and describing God's power, earthly and divine, and how God can actually bring us to life. So this is it. So you begin to see the ideas, who is like you, God? Who can even imitate or be close compared to you? This whole idea of finding that connection, deep connection between ourselves. Remember that the Amidah is first recited alone, intimately between us. We call it in Hebrew Bein Adam Lamakom, between us and the Creator, each of us and the Creator of the universe. And then we find ourselves in this internal discussion of how can we be saved in the sense of finding the meaning in our lives that perhaps because we were in such a hurry during the year we lacked. I want to look at then at the sign. What is that supposed to happen in Rosh Hashanah? We're supposed to be awake. How can we do that? Well, we have a tool. The tool is the shofar. The shofar not only announces the new month, it also reminds us with the three sounds, tekiah, shvarim, truah. With those three different sounds that reminds us to wake up, not that we are perhaps spiritually sleeping. I want to show you a text that speaks volumes about this. Is a text that we actually do not recite at Ashkenazi synagogues, but I thought that it would be very interesting for us to look. It was written by Yehuda Abbas in the 12th century, born in Fez, that is in Morocco, and perished in Aleppo in Syria. And the words that says, at this time, et sharei ratzon, at this time when the gates of goodwill are soon to open. On this day I spread out my hands to you. Please remember me on this day of trial, the binder, the bound, and the altar. It goes like this. Et sharei ratzon lehipateach, Yom he'eh chapai le'el shoteach, Hana zechor na li b'yom ocheach, עוקד והנקד והמזבח. And you noticed that I have, it's a quatrain, that means a poem, a piyut, a religious poem that has a refrain. The words Oked v'hanekad v'hamizveach, the binder, the bound, and the altar. What is it referring to? Referring to the binding of Isaac, Akedat Yitzchak in Hebrew. And technically, as according to the tradition, that the horn that was sacrificed, the ram that was sacrificed, its horns are the ones that built the first shofar. As you see, there are a number, many stanzas for this. All of them, it's a beautiful poem, and notice, for instance, how the rhythm, lehipateach, shoteach, ocheach, but then oked v'hanekad v'hamizbeach. So you see as each that repeats at the end of every quatrain. So that very much of purpose, because if your Hebrew is not stellar and you cannot follow all of it, you probably can, after a while, able to repeat that last four stanza and participate during the prayers, singing that refrain. Interestingly enough, that look at how the next stanza has a different rhyme. Ha'asara, misra, nikshera, bara, but the last line, zoreach. Why zoreach? Because we wanted to rhyme with oked, v'hanekad, v'hamizveach. Listen to it again. את שערי רצון להיפתח, יום היה כפי לאל שוטח, הנא זכור נא לי ביום הוכח, עוקד והנקד והמזבח. So you know, you begin to see how these poems are recited. Now you say, why are we not reciting that? I'm sure Richard is asking this question. Why is it not included in our machzor? Remember the word machzor? The order of the prayers, technically once for the whole year. Since there were so many, we decided to encapsulate it and call machzor only the prayers that are recited between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And you say, so what do we recite if we don't recite that? So it's interesting that we recite other prayers. For instance, a prayer that is it's brought. How can I say it? From Germany, and of course the piyutim, the poems that we discussed, each community has different poems, because if you come from a community in Morocco, probably you would be singing that poem that I reminded you of. But if you don't, you probably singing something else. What could we be singing during the time of the times of the what am I going to say? When the shofar is blown, the prayers that are associated with it. Probably we are reciting something that is called, for instance, Zacharti lach. Zacharti lach meaning I remembered you. Vechesed neuraich, when you were giving your kindness to the youth. It's a text from the prophet Jeremiah, who's the prophet that comes with us to remind us that, especially all the time from the time of Tisha B'Av, remember of the 9th of Av, with the destruction of the temple, that actually that we are not to forget that there is hope, there is always hope, and that we constantly look for that element that brings us redemption, if one wants. So let me play for you. I'm going to share the screen, and I want you to listen to this once, and then I'll just show you the text, and we'll discuss this a little bit. Let's see.
Oh
what is this? It's called Zacharti Lach. It's one of the greatest renditions ever by a composer, German composer, called Louis Lewandowski, contemporary of Schubert, if you remember, in the 19th century. Yes, 19th century, late 19th century. And interestingly enough, the cantor that sang this is called Moshe Korn, who was a very prestigious cantor in a synagogue in London, and where he remained for 20 years, and then moved to the state of Israel, and it died too young, with 59 years old. One of the things that I also want to do for you is to remind you of something that we have lost, is this idea of chazanut, this idea of these great cantors that have added with their voices such beauty and such depth to the prayers. It's not that the prayers need it, but that we need it. We need to capture that. So you say, maybe I don't know what this prayer meant, and on purpose I didn't show you what the text was, because I wanted to get connected with the spirit of it, and then to tell you a little more about what is that you just heard. So during the repetition of this Amidah, of the prayer that we recite first among ourselves personally and then as a group, there is the so-called the service of the shofar. And in this service of the shofar is divided into three parts. Malchuyot, that means kingship, remember the word melech, and also zichronot, remembrances, memories, and then shofarot, the idea of exultance. In this second segment, this idea of memory, in Hebrew zecher, is this text I will now read to you. And your servants, the prophet, that is in this case the prophet Jeremiah, further wrote, "Go proclaim to Jerusalem, thus said God, I remember the affection of your youth, your love, when we were betrothed, when you followed me in the wilderness, a barren land. I will always remember the covenant I made with you in the days of your youth, and establish it with you as a covenant that would last forever." What is the remembrance? The remembrance of the covenant. This idea, a covenant, I want to say to you, not a contract. What do I mean by that? When we have a contract, you have the electric company coming to your home, you have a contract. If they do their job, you pay them. If they don't do their job, you don't pay them. If they did their job, they don't stay at your home, they leave. A covenant is more like the relationship we have as children and parents. We make lots of mistakes, and our parents do what? Sometimes they get upset. But God forbid, chas v'chalila, they will say, "You're not my daughter, you're not my son anymore." That's not what happens. You continue being their daughter, their son. And therefore, for God is the same, that we remind God that there is a covenant, not a contract that we have. And remember, we said to God, remember. Why are we asking God to remember? Because if we perish, right? If we perish, there is no covenant anymore. So I wanna conclude this segment and then let you ask me any questions you may have. with an interesting description that Moshe, our teacher, Moses, has about the Jewish people. And what does he say to God? He reminds God at a time of fury that Am kshe oref hu, that the people of Israel are stubborn. You say stubborn? This is how you go to the judge? You say the person I'm representing is stubborn. This is what you can find. You say it's a rather poor defense, isn't it? What you can't find any better than saying stubborn? And so we get this midrash, we get this story that tells us that Moses says to God, you'll see through history, it doesn't matter what happens, they will stick with you. They will be stubborn, but they will not leave you. And so you have the story of this man who's leaving Spain expelled with his family, and he looks at God and says, I will not leave you. And then continues into Portugal, and part of his family perishes of famine. And he says to God, I will not leave you. And then he continues on his path, and the waters take the rest of his people and whatever he had. And he says, I will not leave you, because without you, I'm nothing. So the incredible connection, whether it's because of the Shoah, the Holocaust, whether it's because of Spain, whether of the many tragedies that has befallen upon the Jewish people, we always stay. We don't say, God, we leave. We sometimes say, why did you abandon us? But we never leave. And we remind Zichronot, we remind God that we're always there. We are flawed. We have lots of mistakes, errors, but we will not leave because we have this covenant. With that, I'm going to see if you have any questions. I don't know if Christina has heard of any that I missed, or if you have any that you would like to ask me at this moment. I'll be happy to see if I can respond them.
We had a question in the chat from Bobby, I think, about Teshuvah and Ruva. Bobby, do you want to ask that again?
Tell me, you're muted. Oh, this is why the words Teshuvah and Ruach translate into English in the plural. Is that the question? Is that the question? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So, not quite. Teshuvah is translated as repentance, not plural for that. There is and
In the
Ruach,
first song. In the first song.
in the first song.
It said answers, and it said spirits, joyful spirit.
I guess he was trying to capture. So sometimes translations try to capture of something that is communal, and therefore they try to connect with the plural just to make you feel that that we are all involved.
Thank
That it
you.
may not one person. Something that I think that is actually interesting for all of us to reflect upon is that the word face in Hebrew is always plural.
Oh.
So the word face in Hebrew is panim, right? And we use the word faces, technically, like recognizing that we don't have only one face, but we have many connotations to our being, and therefore the idea is
Right.
that we are different. I'm different with you than I'm with my wife or with the grandchildren or with Richard. It's all, we all have a different connection, right? And therefore Hebrew doesn't translate face in the singular. And then why am I saying this? Because when we come back next week, we're going to be looking at a text that says, Al taster panecha mimeni. Do not hide your face or your faces from us.
Yeah.
Recognizing that if we have many faces, Al kama v'kama, how much more God, how many more faces God has, right? And then finally, to remind us of what we say about the Torah. And we say that the Torah, Shivim panim la Torah, the Torah has 70 faces. 70 faces. The more you look, you'll find. 70, of course, not the literal number 70, the number 70 because it's related to 7, which means, as you know, the 7 days of the week, the 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot, the idea of completion, of culmination, right? So 70, of course, right, is the idea that the Torah is complete and pure and not that it has only 70 faces. Right? Yes.
I remember my buddy telling everybody, all those kids, they had a shame upon them.
There you go. There you go. Exactly. Any other questions?
Hi, Hazan. I have a question.
Please.
It's Sherry.
Yes.
So, are we trying to remind Hashem that we have a covenant with Him, or are we reminding ourselves that we have a covenant with Hashem?
So first of all, Sherry, so wonderful to see you. So the first thing is that. The second is that at this moment, when we are trying this idea, Zochrenu lechaim, remember us for life, is because we are cognizant, perhaps as it happened to me today at a funeral, of this idea of mi yechye mi yamut, who will live and who will die, right? Recognizing that the idea of death is very, very possible, that it can happen, that when we think that we can plan, like we, sometimes when we're young and we think that we can plan the rest of our lives or what's going to happen, or to postpone, or when we postpone saying what during the pandemic, right? I'm gonna wait. We should not wait. The time is now. So what you asked is, we want to remind God of that covenant because of that Psalm 118 that says, Lo hameitim yalelucha. The death cannot praise you. You see. So in some sense, if you want to, it's a little bit of a reminder to God in a very mischievous way that says you have to stick with us, because if you don't stick with us and if we are not here, who will praise you? Who will tell your glories? Just so you know, as I am cognizant that we're done, I want to remind you that remind you, actually to tell you, that next week we're going to begin with one of the central PU themes of this Amidah, of these religious poems. It's called Untane Tokef. And what we're going to actually also view is a particular melody and text that has been created at the Yom Kippur War in 1973, as we're going to, unfortunately, remember the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, 1973-2023. We will say that more about at services during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so show up. No, just kidding. But seriously, we will talk about that more, and I thank you, my gratitude. I always answer my emails with these words, Beshir vekol toda, with a song and a voice full of gratitude for your patience and understanding. I hope to be able to continue this process of cleansing, of scrutiny that we are engaging during this month of Elul and during the whole year, but especially now, until we arrive to Rosh Hashanah, and be able to say to all of you, Tisku leshanim rabot uneimot, may you merit to have many years in your lives. I'm not saying it yet because we are still working on it, but hopefully we'll be able to say that to each of us. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you next week with the help of God.
Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Love you. Baruch Tia.